Hello and welcome to Reportage with Danish bin Nabi. I am today joined by a policy analyst and former interlocutor on Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Radha Kumar. I shall be asking her about the dissenting voices, farmers' protests, as well as Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Kumar, warm welcome to the Reportage. Dr. Kumar, the first thing I want to know from you is this. Why isn't the present ruling dispensation allowing any form of criticism? Why is it so?
Well, there have been a lot of comments on this saying that there seems to be a very strong element of paranoia. I mean, it's so marked compared to the first term. Even in the first term of the Modi administration, there was a considerable intolerance for protest and certainly for dissent. But in the second term, it has, what should I say? It has gone beyond all bounds, slapping sedition charges left, right, and center. I read yesterday that almost 6,000 people have been charged with various forms of sedition, unlawful activities, and so on. And all of these, of course, are acts which give the investigating agencies much more of a free hand than they do the accused person's rights to, representation, to dissent, to bail, to habeas corpus. Every important civil right has been violated. Frankly, paranoia may be one explanation. I think ghamand is the other. They have a kind of such a strong belief that they should stand above any criticism. And that seems to rest entirely on their having won a majority in parliament. Now, the two do not go together at all. Having a majority in parliament does not place you above criticism.
Dr. Kumar, what essential role has social media played in all this?
Very unfortunate, it appears. Fake news spread on social media by these dedicated trolls is now well established that, in fact, the BJP party IT cell generates an enormous amount of fake information, which is then spread further by the trolls. And it's combined with the most gross and vulgar abuse, which makes it impossible to have any kind of conversation. Now, I have to say, by the way, I decided that I too had better join social media in order to try to see how does all of this happen? Why does it happen? Where are the other voices? And they are clearly in a minority simply because the trolls spread so much abuse that any halfway civil, polite, decent, considerate, tolerant person does not want to get involved.
Why has the opposition parties, why have they failed in catching up with the IT cell, the so-called IT cell?
Well, they do not seem to have that kind of dedicated band of followers. Certainly the Congress IT cell, I think, tried quite hard to mirror the BJP IT cell in sort of being prolific and tweeting and so on all the time. But as far as I can see, their followers are far fewer, their trolls are far fewer. One of the problems, I would say, for most of the opposition parties, perhaps not all, is that they do still uphold to some extent the values of the Constitution. And that will hold them back from being abusive, lying, and so on. The other problem is that is actually a good news problem, which is that some, though I will sadly except the Congress from that number. But some parties still believe in old-fashioned door-to-door campaigning, in getting to know their voters and their constituency. And that actually is a very good thing, but it does mean that they lose out on all the social media impact. One final thing I would like to say about social media. I think that, frankly, our established media, both print and television, have failed us terribly. They have become susceptible to social media. They all go on about trending this and trending that, and somebody's abusive. Every new abusive tweet, they give prominence to. I mean, take the case of Miss Kangana Ranaut. She is incapable of doing anything other than abusing. And yet, for some reason, she makes headlines. She's not even an important actress.
Dr. Kumar, the Indian civil society, where does that stand in all the things that are going presently?
I think that civil society actually, certainly in the last 2 to 3 years, has revitalized itself. If you see the voices of dissent coming from all around the country, every profession, people are beginning to feel that they have to stand up to some extent. What the impact of this will be over time, we don't know. We've already seen the impact as far as the farmers' movement is concerned. There is no doubt that the arrest of someone like Disha Ravi, who is obviously clearly an idealistic young woman, with all the rashness of youth. We all know that, huh? We've all been young. We all know how we can sometimes be rash, how we can sometimes believe what may not be entirely accurate, and so on. Now you're punished for this rashness. This is utterly ridiculous. The ideas are stamped upon, and that shows fear. I would say, therefore, civil society, the revitalization, and especially the farmers' movement, has made this government step back a little. It has shocked them a little. Whether it will make them do the right thing, of course, is an entirely different matter. Unfortunately, it does not seem that they will.
You are also a civil society member, Dr. Kumar. Do you think you have failed the people of India by not talking much about the civil liberties?
Well, since I have been the age of Disha Ravi, which is more than 40 years ago, I've tried in my way to talk about civil liberties and human rights. As a student, as a feminist, in the days of Bhopal as an environmentalist, and then later in my professional life, I tried to make sure that in our think tank, we always bore human rights and civil liberties in mind whenever we produced any document or any form of analysis. Having said that, I'll say that I do feel that I have failed. Failed myself, failed my family, failed my country, failed my friends. In that, I didn't make the kind of sustained effort that was required to bring political parties on board. I think that has been a general failure of the Indian middle class of my generation. We thought politics was a dirty business, so we didn't work with politicians. Had we done so, perhaps we would have helped build more solid and more committed political parties than we have today.
Dr. Kumar, let's move to the other segment of this discussion. It's the farmers. Do you think the farmers are having a legitimate battle right now? They're fighting a legitimate battle?
I can't comment on the rights and wrongs of the agricultural laws themselves. I'm not an agricultural expert, but I will say one thing in which I feel they are absolutely right. And not only that they are right, but that personally, individually, I want to offer every kind of support I can give them.
In
And
other
that is that they were not consulted.
in
They were not consulted.
in other words, you are saying that these three laws should be taken back.
I believe that when you pass laws that affect a sizable and critical segment of the population, you have to take those people on board. Those laws have to reflect their aspirations. People are intelligent. I mean, it seems ridiculous to have to say that. But the truth of the matter is, if there's something that affects my life, I wish to be able to use my own intelligence to determine whether that is right or wrong. And I wish to make my own inputs into that. And under our constitution, the farmers have every legitimate right to be consulted. These laws should have been put in the public domain. You know, when our constitution was drafted, it was put in the public domain for 6 months, the draft, in order to invite responses. They got the drafters of the Constitution got more than 10,000 responses. And they looked at each one of them, tried to incorporate each one of them, and only then was a final draft prepared. Now, here you have these laws, which affect, frankly, every single Indian. No consultation, no discussion. This is not acceptable. You look at the same thing for women. Now they're talking about raising the age of marriage to 18, to 21 from 18. Frankly, these are issues, whether the farm laws, whether raising of the age of marriage, these are issues on which you should have a referendum. Let every citizen of this country vote. Put the laws out in the public domain.
Ma'am, in the recent article you wrote for The Wire, you write, and I quote, "The only people who seemed to heed Gandhi were the farmer leaders, who called off their parade and the proposed follow-up march to the parliament, much as Gandhi had done during Chora Chori." Are you trying to say that farmers are Indian people, the freedom movement people, and the present ruling dispensation is the British occupying forces?
Well, yes, in a word, I do believe that our government is behaving in more and more of a colonial way. And the evidences are innumerable. Take the latest. I mean, who ever heard of a capital city being locked down against peaceful protest? It's a fundamental of democracy that people who have a grievance with the government should be able to bring it to the seat of the government, so long as they are peaceful. Now, if you are not allowed to even approach your government in the capital city, then you have no democracy left. Now, on the Gandhian thing, yes, it seems to me that, again, most of the evidence or whatever is in the public domain shows that it is one small section of farmers who broke away from the approved and agreed route and went to the Red Fort. Nevertheless, the entire coordinating committee representing all the farmers who are protesting decided to withdraw their campaign and their protest. They accepted responsibility for people who were not even their own people. That is what Gandhiji did. And I think that is an extraordinary moral demonstration that these farmers have given us. And I'm very sorry that all the media did not highlight and profile that, because today in our country, there is hardly anybody who's willing to take moral responsibility.
Dr. Kumar, let me go to the last segment of this discussion, and that's the Jammu and Kashmir. My first question to you is, Was abrogating the special status of Jammu Kashmir a right move?
Of course not. Again, it comes to the same point. No consultation, no discussion, no putting in the public domain for consideration before you take such a huge step. You know, the abrogation, well, although as lawyers call it, the reading down of Article 370 has innumerable legal faults in it, beginning with can you use the article to vitiate the article itself, to empty it of all content. But for me, the main point over here is consultation, democratic consideration, and most important, well, I shouldn't say most, equally important, you have dealt a blow to the federal structure of the Constitution. We had an asymmetric federalism, which is a very good thing, which many, many countries in the world have. Canada, for example, um, Portugal, Spain. Now, you took that asymmetrical element out, but your next step has been to attack even the symmetrical federalism of this country. States have less and less voice today in issues that are of the state's critical central concern. Whether it's the police, you look at that Bihar police going off to Mumbai complaining like mad because they are asked to quarantine. I mean, excuse me, they are above spreading COVID or what? They are some gods who are immune and who won't do damage. Come on. Same Delhi police goes off to Bangalore. It's not at all clear what kinds of clearances they had. They did not produce her before a magistrate. So Delhi suddenly has become a center overriding all the states. And Delhi isn't even a state.
Dr. Kumar, you only few days back released a human rights report, your group, which was not carried by the local media in Jammu and Kashmir, barring few media outlets. To quote you, you have written that there is a near total alienation of the people of Kashmir. Can you further explain this?
All right. Well, first of all, last year, an independent group in Kashmir did a survey that found that 99% of the people of the valley were deeply anguished by the way in which Article 370 had been read down, and were completely alienated from both the government of India and, I'm sorry to say, the people of India, which are two different things. Secondly, common sense itself can tell you that people will be alienated. Look at what this government did in August 2019. Not only did they secretively and through the back door read down and remove the special status of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, they imposed a military lockdown. They arrested almost 6,000 people. They kept them in detention without filing charges for more than a year, most of them. Even today, 183 people are in detention. They are slapping UAPA on all and sundry, just as they are doing in the rest of the country. They have even closed the Jammu and Kashmir Administrative Service. They have created an economic meltdown in that state, which went from one of the better performing states of India, according to the Niti Aayog, in 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18, to now one of the worst performing states in the country. Industries have been brought to their knees. The tourism industry, we hope it will look up now, but it was bankrupted. We see that the houseboat industry may actually cease to function altogether. They may go out of business altogether. Now tell me, with all these factors, how is it possible for people not to be alienated?
Dr. Kumar, in 2010, you were here as an interlocutor. You presented a report to the Congress government. Again, that government did not pay any heed to your report. Do you think had they done anything on that report, situation in Jammu and Kashmir would have been entirely different?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think they missed a terribly important opportunity. You know, from my research and studies, I have learned a couple of very basic points. First of all, the longer you let a political conflict go unaddressed, meaning you don't deal with the root causes of that conflict, the worse and more difficult to resolve it gets. There is also often you come to a point where you have a huge opportunity, but you have to recognize that opportunity is also narrow. The more you neglect to use an opportunity, the more it narrows. And I did believe then, and I said so rather loudly, I'm afraid to say, that I thought that was perhaps a last opportunity for the government of India to make a really serious, substantive, lasting peace in Jammu and
And
Kashmir.
government of India missed that opportunity.
They missed that opportunity. They did not listen to us when we said, for goodness sake, even if you are not ready to take the big leap of restoring perhaps Article 370 in its full intent when it was first agreed, at least set up a constitutional group that will go into which elements of its vitiation over the past many decades can be rolled back. Make a peace of honor both for India and for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. At least put the building blocks in place for that peace with honor, is what we were trying to say. It is really, I don't know how to say how sad and painful it is to see that I was unfortunately right. It was the last opportunity, at least for another 5 years.
Dr. Kumar, peace with honor. Let's leave it at that point. See you next time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Please subscribe to our channel Reportage and press the bell icon to remain updated.